A reading from 2 Samuel chapter 5. Then all the tribes of Israel went to David at Hebron and said to him, "We are your own flesh and blood. In the past, even when Saul was still our king, you led the people of Israel in battle, and the Lord promised you that you would lead his people and be their ruler." So all the leaders of Israel came to King David at Hebron. He made a sacred alliance with them. They anointed him, and he became king of Israel. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he ruled for 40 years. He ruled in Hebron over Judah for 7.5 years, and in Jerusalem over all Israel and Judah for 33 years. The time came when King David and his men set out to attack Jerusalem. The Jebusites who lived there thought that David would not be able to conquer the city, and so they said to him, "You will never get in here. Even the blind and the crippled could keep you out." But David did capture their fortress of Zion, and it became known as David's city. That day David said to his men, "Does anybody here hate the Jebusites as much as I do? Enough to kill them? Then go up through the water tunnel and attack those poor blind cripples." That is why it is said, "The blind and the crippled cannot enter the Lord's house." After capturing the fortress, David lived in it and named it David's city. He built the city around it, starting at the place where land was filled in on the east side of the hill. He grew stronger all the time because the Lord God Almighty was with him. King Hiram of Tyre sent a trade mission to David. He provided him with cedar logs and with carpenters and stonemasons to build a palace. And so David realized that the Lord had established him as king of Israel and was making his kingdom prosperous for the sake of his people. After moving from Hebron to Jerusalem, David took more concubines and wives and had more sons and daughters. The following children were born to him in Jerusalem: Shemua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar, Elishua, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphalet. The Philistines were told that David had been made king of Israel, so their army set out to capture him. When David heard of it, he went down to a fortified place. The Philistines arrived at Rephaim Valley and occupied it. David asked the Lord, "Shall I attack the Philistines? Will you give me victory?" "Yes, attack," the Lord answered. "I will give you the victory." So David went to Baal Perazim, and there he defeated the Philistines. He said, "The Lord has broken through my enemies like a flood." And so that place is called Baal Perazim. When the Philistines fled, they left their idols behind, and David and his men carried them away. Then the Philistines went back to Rephaim Valley and occupied it again. Once more David consulted the Lord, who answered, "Don't attack them from here, but go around and get ready to attack them from the other side, near the balsam trees. When you hear the sound of marching in the treetops, then attack, because I will be marching ahead of you to defeat the Philistine army." David did what the Lord had commanded and was able to drive the Philistines back from Geba all the way to Gezer. The word of the Lord. A reading from 2 Samuel chapter 6. Once more David called together the best soldiers in Israel, a total of 30,000 men, and led them to Baalah in Judah in order to bring from there God's covenant box, bearing the name of the Lord Almighty, whose throne is above the winged creatures. They took it from Abinadab's home on the hill and placed it on a new cart. Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were guiding the cart, with Ahio walking in front. David and all the Israelites were dancing and singing with all their might to honor the Lord. They were playing harps, lyres, drums, rattles, and cymbals. As they came to the threshing place of Nacon, the oxen stumbled, and Uzzah reached out and took hold of the covenant box. At once the Lord God became angry with Uzzah and killed him because of his irreverence. Uzzah died there beside the covenant box, and so that place has been called Perez Uzzah ever since. David was furious because the Lord had punished Uzzah in anger. Then David was afraid of the Lord and said, "How can I take the covenant box with me now?" So he decided not to take it with him to Jerusalem. Instead, he turned off the road and took it to the house of Obed-Edom, a native of the city of Gath. It stayed there 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and his family. King David heard that because of the covenant box, the Lord had blessed Obed-Edom's family and all that he had, so he got the covenant box from Obed's house to take it to Jerusalem with a great celebration. After the men carrying the covenant box had gone 6 steps, David had them stop while he offered the Lord a sacrifice of a bull and a fattened calf. David, wearing only a linen cloth around his waist, danced with all his might to honor the Lord. And so he and all the Israelites took the covenant box up to Jerusalem with shouts of joy and the sound of trumpets. As the box was being brought into the city, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked out of the window and saw King David dancing and jumping around in the sacred dance, and she was disgusted with him. They brought the box and put it in its place in the tent that David had set up for it. Then he offered sacrifices and fellowship offerings to the Lord. When he had finished offering the sacrifices, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord Almighty and distributed food to them all. He gave each man and woman in Israel a loaf of bread, a piece of roasted meat, and some raisins. Then everyone went home. Afterward, when David went home to greet his family, Michal came out to meet him. "The king of Israel made a big name for himself today," she said. "He exposed himself like a fool in the sight of the servant women of his officials." David answered, "I was dancing to honor the Lord, who chose me instead of your father and his family to make me the leader of his people Israel. And I will go on dancing to honor the Lord and will disgrace myself even more. You may think I am nothing, but those women will think highly of me." Michal, Saul's daughter, never had any children. The word of the Lord.